Hey death metal heads, this is Harris from Sodomisery. I play guitar and compose all the songs. We are a Swedish death metal band, originally from Stockholm. We've been around since 2015. It was a solo project at the start. Produced an EP with some friends from different bands, and was not supposed to be anything more than that, but yeah, one thing led to another, and became a band in like 2017. And we released our first album in 2020, called The Great Demise, which was our debut. And now we released our second album, Mazzaroth, which came out September this year, 2023. So that's a short introduction and story behind the band. First question, what's the story behind the name Sodomisery? And I'm glad I finally got this question, because it's kind of controversial and people think that it means one thing or another, but here's a real answer, and the answer is that it's kind of a wordplay between the word Sodom, which is a biblical city which God wiped from the face of the earth because the inhabitants committed some sins of some sort. So it's a wordplay between Sodom and misery. And it's a general theme in Sodomisery and in the lyrics, the sins that are committed by men and women, and the whole religious thing, to be afraid to commit sins. So I found it pretty fitting, and after Googling the name, I realized that I actually think I found something quite unique. The bad part is, I think, people associate it with sodomy, which is really funny, but well, there you have it. That's the real answer. Next question. What themes did you explore in this release? Well, it's kind of a reoccurring theme, as I said before, when it comes to religious stuff and sins. But on this album, Mazzaroth, we also, as previous album, go into the mental illness that we see today amongst people. It's stress, mental illness, and depression is a big part of society today. So I kind of continued on that theme, both from personal experience from the past and what I see today. So it is kind of a story about the mental struggle of the individual in life. For example, the song Psychogenic is about when I was living back in Stockholm. I lived there for like 14 years when I moved recently, but it's about being among so many people and the stress and everything around. It becomes a pressure, just being an ant in an ant colony, and so I'm not gonna say more. It's preferred that the listener interprets the lyrics, really. So that leads us to the next question. Could you give us some background on the album cover? Well, I found the word Mazzaroth, which translates to constellations. I think it's from some Hebrew translation somewhere. But the cover in itself is a mix. It represents the constellations, but also the feeling of lying down in the snow alone, looking up to the sky, and understanding that there's more to life than just the hamster wheel that society has built for us. So it goes back to the theme of a kind of mental journey that we all go through in life. Yeah, pretty much it. So, next question. How has your cooperation with Testimony Records been, and how did it influence the album production? Well, for this album, it has been pretty good. We had really good teamwork, and yeah, they listened a lot to what we wanted to do, and yeah, we pretty much had free hands to do whatever we wanted with an album. So that's good. They didn't particularly have much influence at all in the writing or production in any way. So yeah, that's cool. It's been good overall, I would say. And here's a big question. In your opinion, is having a label deal crucial in today's music industry? That's a really hard question. There is no yes or no to that. It all depends. But from my personal experience, when I started Sodomisery and we got our first album, we thought, yeah, do we need a label? Can we do it on our own? What's the pros and cons of having a label? And I think the biggest thing immediately is that, well, distribution is a huge part. You don't really want to do that by yourself. But then again, it all comes down to your knowledge and your experience, expertise, contacts, everything. So if you know how all those things work, then you could probably pull it off on your own. But for us, we felt that we don't know how any of that works. So what we really looked for in a label is to help us with distribution, but also a big part of signing with a label is you immediately get their kind of promotion and reach from the start. If you're a no-name band, you need all promotion you can get right from the start. And you can either hire a PR agency and do it all yourself, or you can try to sign with a label that has all those things in place that could help you get out fast. So I think for new bands, yeah, it depends on the label, really. There's no point in signing with a label if it's a small label that has virtually no way of promoting you. I see a lot of bands signing with really shit deals and shit labels that probably a meta ad would get them a lot further than the label is actually doing for them. So I don't know. But if you would say sign with a big label and that would pretty much help you promotional wise a lot. But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. It all depends on you as individuals, as band, experience, and what kind of label and what kind of deal, and most importantly, what are you looking for in a label? Because it's a two-way street. You need to think of it, well, what does a label get from you? So it's basically you're the product and they are the company. So if you have something they can sell that's easy to sell, then they would probably push your album a lot. But yeah, it's a complicated world, to say the least. Moving on. When did you first start listening to death metal, and what led you to discover and become a fan of the genre? Right. I came in pretty late to death metal, to be honest. I was listening mostly to like Metallica, heavy metal, progressive metal, power metal, right up until I was like 16, I think. And a buddy of mine introduced me to a bunch of death and black metal. It was a guy named Vladimir, and I joined his band, and he introduced me to Morbid Angel and Testament, a bit thrashy, and all those kind of bands. And later on I had another friend who introduced me to The Crown and like Old Man's Child, Dark Funeral. So I got into that pretty late, when I was about 16, I would say. So pretty cool. It was pretty funny to get used to the growl and the harsh type of stuff coming from the power metal and progressive kind of music. So it was a learning curve, and looking back, it's pretty funny now. Now I can't really imagine not listening to death metal. So pretty funny. Yeah, okay, moving on. If you could change one thing about the music industry, what would it be? Right. Another pretty complicated question, but I think today it's all about online, right? And streaming. What I've seen personally is, physical CDs and vinyls don't really sell as good as they did before. But also how bands reach out and get gigs and everything. It comes down to really bookers looking at, how many followers and likes do you have, and how much streams do you have on streaming services. So I would say the power of streaming companies is pretty big, and sadly they seem to favor bigger artists, because from what I've seen and what I know is that it's a lot easier for a bigger band to get some tools to get into like playlists and other stuff that smaller bands with smaller like listeners per month don't have. So yeah, it's a lot harder for a small band to reach through. But if you are a bigger band, it's a lot easier to get your streams up when you release a new album. So yeah, the streaming companies have a pretty big power over bands, I would say. So that's what I would change. Don't ask me how, but something has to change. So, next question. Have you encountered any memorable epic fails during live performances? Yes, a lot. I would say almost every gig something happens. But the most reoccurring thing I think that's happened for me playing live all the years is I've gotten my hair stuck while headbanging in the bass player of the band. For some reason, it's always the bass player. So when I'm headbanging, I'm like flipping my hair, and it always kind of gets stuck on the bass player's neck, and it always takes like half a minute to sort it out. This has happened with like multiple bands across multiple years and shows, and it's pretty funny. It's something I just expect to happen nowadays. So, but another recent epic fail that happened is we played a show in Bucharest this year with Sodomisery, and my session guitarist Teddy, his guitar completely died, and that was the first time I've ever seen a guitar die. It was the electronics inside. Something had happened. So. It was mid-set, and so I had to quickly figure out which parts he was playing in the song, but only he was playing. There was a break where he was supposed to play, so I had to adjust really quick and figure out how I played that part before. So yeah, that was pretty funny. Yeah. And the most fun thing about being an introvert, but being a frontman, is after that song, I had to talk to the audience, and not being like the social kind of guy, pushing myself to like entertain the audience, I told some pretty bad jokes, and the audience laughed, but it was pretty horrible, so that was an epic fail. Okay, moving on. Are there any recent music or movies that have deeply impressed you? Yes. By the time I'm filming this interview, my buddy's Nightcrown just released an awesome album named Tales. I've only listened through it like once or twice, but it's pretty damn good. You should check it out. They always do killer stuff, and the songs are top notch, and Janne on the drums is amazing, and it's great stuff. You should definitely check them out if you haven't. Okay, next question. What are your thoughts on the future of death metal as a genre? That's an interesting one. We have seen a lot of shifts through the years. We have seen old school death metal get big again. For example, my friends in Stockholm called Leak, they kind of revived that old school Dismember Entombed kind of vibe. And that has become popular again. It's pretty fun to see really old genres getting big again. And we have also seen some rise in the deathcore genre, and it's not my favorite at all. I'm not really keen on that kind of death metal. But what I'm really hoping for is maybe to see a rise of bands of kind of like Dimmu Borgir and Cradle of Filth and those kind of bands, because that's the kind of death metal I like the most, like the melodic symphonic kind of metal. I think it's cool, and that's also why I decided for this album to add keyboards to our sound. I like that old school kind of Bodom, Cradle, Dimmu kind of sound. It's not many bands doing that nowadays, so that would be cool to see if it would be a swing up for that kind of subgenre. So I hope so. Right. Can you describe the current death metal scene in Stockholm? This is kind of a sad one, because whenever I get friends from outside of Sweden visiting, and mostly before, because I don't live in Stockholm anymore, they would say like, hey, take me to your local death metal bar or something. And I would say, well, there isn't really many places that play rock or metal at all in Stockholm. And sadly, we have seen a lot of great venues for underground death metal bands playing that have completely disappeared over the years. At least 2 or 3 venues that you can go on any given Friday and see some death metal underground and also like mid-sized bands. They have all like disappeared, so it's kind of sad. We see some new places popping up now, but it's like really small bars, and it's kind of sad to see, because the bands, there are a ton of great bands in Stockholm playing death metal, and they deserve to play at better venues, and the audience deserves to see the bands on better stages, and so it's kind of sad. I would say the scene isn't the scene in itself is alive, but the venues are not what they should be, in my opinion. But I give a huge prop to everyone who is fighting to get something done, and the places that are currently fighting for the death metal scene. Huge props for them for keeping the flame alive, and I hope something more will happen. We'll see. So, speaking of death metal, what's your top favorite death metal album of all time, and why? Jesus, this is a really hard one to answer. But yeah, looking through my collection, I would say an album that you can't really say is anything other than spectacular is the Bloodbath album, Nightmares Made Flesh. It's for sure one of my all-time favorites. I love everything about it. It's great. Which leads us to the next question. What's the best death metal album cover art ever? This is also an album that I think is probably one of my most favorite, but it's the Morbid Angel album, Altars of Madness. I just love the cover art. It's just complete chaos, and it's damn cool. That's all I have to say. It's damn cool. So, next question. Is there a death metal song or album that deeply resonated with you, shaping your perspective or evoking intense emotions? I don't know. I'm not the kind of guy that really reads the lyrics, not when it comes to death metal at least, or trying to find some deeper meaning. I mostly listen to death metal because I like the intensity and the melodic parts. So no, not really. I wouldn't say. But yeah, it is what it is. Moving on. How does the lyrical content impact your appreciation of the genre? Well, I kind of answered that already, but I mean, death metal in itself, a lot of bands that write lyrics, if you take Cannibal Corpse, for example, I mean, it's kind of bullshit lyrics, to be honest. I mean, it's mostly for the kind of, yeah, I don't really know, to be extreme, I guess. I write lyrics out of, like, I don't know, different ideas, and it doesn't all have a meaning. Some songs are like, well, it's only because of like anger or like, I don't know. It's lyrics aren't that important for me in death metal. I mean, if it was a small ballad about something, then lyrics are a lot more important because you're trying to convey a message that can be heard. But if you're growling and everything, then it's pretty hard to convey a message, I would say. All right, moving on. What plans do you have for the future of Sodomisery? Well, we just released an album 2 months ago, and my plan is to grow as much as we possibly can online, because it's speaking of streaming services, it's really hard to reach through the big crowd today on social platforms. So I see a lot of work to be done trying to reach new fans, because that's what we need to do. We need to reach our fans across the world so they know that we exist. That's priority number one, to grow online. Sadly, what I would personally like to do is play as much live shows as possible. That is where my true passion lies. I love playing live. But to get there, we need to grow as much as we can. Okay, and the last question. Any message for death metal promotion channel subscribers? Yeah, I'd say keep supporting the scene and underground as best as you can. And the best thing you can do to support your favorite underground band is to share their music online on the platforms. If you think a song is kick-ass, then share it. And yeah, then that gives a band a chance to get picked up by bookers or like labels and stuff. It makes a huge difference. The fans hold the power also. It's not only the streaming services. So keep supporting your band as much as you can. It's a tough world out there, so we can't let the scene die, right? So with those words, I wish you the best, and I'll see you out on the roads. Take care.